So I'm sure at some point we've all harboured this dream of what we thought would be the ideal life, doing something that we wanted to do on our terms without having a care in the world. I think it's colloquially called living the dream. But what actually is it like to live the dream? So you know what, living the dream is great. You can base yourself pretty much from anywhere. At the moment I'm by the coast, however I could be pretty much anywhere. I could be near a stream somewhere deep in a forest. I could be staying at some very luxurious hotel overlooking the ocean. Or I could be watching a spectacular sunset. Or maybe trekking to the top of a volcano. So I think one of the strange things about life is how it creates a parody of itself at times. And when you sort of, all the people that sort of say, oh, live the dream, do this, do that, and you too can be successful and so on, it always sort of seems to me like those people have never been successful, because unless if you're very lucky and perhaps you win the lottery or something, then you never actually get to experience what most people would classify as living the dream. You tend to have a very different view on exactly what it takes to be successful, what it takes to maintain that position, and also the sort of amount of work that takes. I think most people's view of living a dream is a lottery win. It takes very little effort, you get huge amounts of money, and then you can do whatever you like with the rest of your life. But in fact, if you've actually approached things in a sensible and logical manner, there's no reason why you couldn't live the dream as well, but perhaps it's going to be slightly different from what you would expect. So I didn't have the best start in life. It's a long story and I'm not going to cover all of it from here. But basically, not only did I not have a leg up, I didn't have any sort of sense of privilege in terms of what I was going to do. I was working several steps backwards, basically. There's absolutely no reason why I could have got to where I am today. It just doesn't make any sense, really. But the thing that defined it for me was that I just knew that I wanted better, and I knew that I was going to have to work for it. And you have setbacks and problems, and you have a sort of meandering path that you have to follow. But generally, one of the most important things that you can do is you can sort of say, well, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do. How am I going to get there? And the answer is, most of the time you won't know. But you can make a decision when you come to certain points within the path, where the path splits, where you sort of say, well, does this move me nearer to my goal or further away? And you can make a decision on that basis. It doesn't mean that you're following the right path. It may turn out to be a dead end, but you need some sort of guiding light or principle to stand by. So, I knew what I wanted to achieve. I didn't know how I was going to get there, but rather than coming up with some master plan as to how I was going to achieve it, every fork that came in the path in front of me, I just used this guide to sort of say, well, does this get me nearer or further away from where I want to get to? And ultimately that was the way that I sort of built on things. So yeah, don't believe that there's some preordained path that if you followed, you would be able to get there. Sometimes it's not as simple as that. But if you work hard, then you may have to go down a few blind alleys, but ultimately you will find your path forward. And I'd say that's a key and critical bit of advice to you. Come up with a goal that you want to achieve. It doesn't have to be with trading, it could be with anything in your life whatsoever. And then when you make decisions at critical points within your life, you have to decide whether that's moving you towards or away from that. And then you just have to keep following the path that moves you toward it. It doesn't mean that you'll be on the right path all of the time, but it means that eventually, if you keep following those paths all of the time, then you will eventually reach your goal. Now, I think that living the dream is something that people aspire to, but I'll tell you how I think that living the dream manifests itself for most people, and that is winning the lottery. Because you have absolutely no money, then you've got absolutely loads, and you can suddenly start making those life decisions. But I'll tell you something funny that happens when you actually do it the proper way, and that is that you work hard to achieve something special. And that is, you don't notice that it's happening. The money becomes a byproduct of what you're doing. You don't, and your life choices and all of the other things, they become byproducts of your work. You don't realize that it's all taking place. It just happens around you, and then eventually you look back and reflect, and you sort of think, oh wow, I've travelled a long way. But the funny thing is you don't behave in a different way all of a sudden. You're the same person that you were many years ago, but you've obviously got much further along the path. And most of the stuff that you're going to be doing is hard work. You have to have this passion and belief in what you're doing. And I say the word passion because you're going to have difficult times, you can have times when things aren't quite working out. So you need that passion to drive you through that process. And you're also going to get skeptics and people trying to put you off and all of those sort of things. So the passion is there to keep you moving forward, regardless of what sort of obstacles are put in your way. And you need to work hard to be able to achieve something special. So I've worked incredibly hard over the last 20 plus years, and I've carefully documented everything that I've done because I wanted to show people the path that I had followed. I wanted to show that this was all sort of planned, as it were. I knew what I was doing, I knew what I wanted to achieve. And when you go through that process, you tend to find that you forget about the journey, really. You're so focused on that goal in the future, and you keep pushing towards that and doing better and better and better, that you almost forget about what it's like to technically live the dream. And everybody that I've met that's been successful is the same. They have this overriding goal that they're trying to achieve. They have projects that they want to manifest as being successful, so they keep on pushing in that direction. Never at any point do they stop and sort of say, this is living the dream. It's a lot of hard work, it's incremental process, it's pushing in that particular direction, and if you follow the same sort of path, then there's no reason that you couldn't do the same as well. So yeah, I think my advice to you is that even if you think that living the dream is all about being financially independent and beautiful beaches and shorelines and stuff like that, it actually turns out to be nothing like that. It's a lot of hard work, and you sort of continue to push in that direction, and all of these things become a byproduct of that, and you almost forget about them, really. They just become choices that you make on the way. I think that would be different if you won the lottery, because its money is bestowed upon you. But when you've had to earn it the hard way, you value it an awful lot more. So when you see me do some trading, or I'm talking about investing, or anything basically, especially when we're looking at the Betfair trading side of things, it can seem almost magical. It seems like there's some giant secret that I'm holding back, that maybe if only you knew that, you would be able to make enormous amounts of money. And I'm going to tell you what that big secret is. There is no big secret. When you look at me trading and you see some of the results that I post up, what you're seeing there is the end product of a lot of work. So I think, people sort of say, trading, this is true. I turn up to a race 10 minutes before the race, I actively trade it, I hedge my position, and then I'm out. And obviously I do investing and trading in other markets, but basically that little process that you're seeing there is the culmination of a lot of work. So I've done the research, I know what to expect, I've traded hundreds of thousands of markets. So when I turn up to a market, I've instantly got a view on what I think it's going to do, and then I can start actively trading it. I make mistakes, things don't go the way that they expect, but I've come to terms with that. Trading is the process of taking risk, not avoiding it. So when you learn to do that, you begin to start taking more risk. You put stuff in, you sort of think, well, I think this could happen. No, it didn't, and so I'm out. But the problem is, if you're trying to avoid losing money or something like that, you become very tied to your position, and that influences the outcome. But when you become comfortable with taking risk, you begin to learn that it's a game of speculation, is about anticipating something, seeing that something could happen, and putting yourself in the position to benefit from that. But if it doesn't happen, then you have to accept quickly that it didn't work, and then you have to get out, and that could be for a small profit, a loss, or whatever. But you're basically playing a game of speculation. When I turn up to a market, I look at the market, I try and understand what I'm looking at, and then I will position myself ahead of that. I'm only going to be 10, 15 seconds max in front of that, sometimes a lot less than that. But basically, when I see that something is likely to happen, I will put myself in the position to be able to profit from that. And when it doesn't, I just cut it out and I start again. I look for another opportunity. But all of that process is a very short amount of time. But prior to that process, and at the end of every large week that I've had, I'll go back and I'll watch videos, I'll analyze data, I'll refine and improve the process. And I spend 80 to 90% of my time doing that, wading through spreadsheets, looking at data. And it doesn't mean that there's something special in there. I'm just looking for interesting angles, things that I can improve on, little incremental changes that I can make. Because don't forget, when I started Betfair trading, all I did was put 2 orders in the market, and then I thought, I wonder how I can get both of those matched. That is essentially exactly the same thing that I do today, but with a lot more experience. I can turn up to market, I can look at a market tomorrow and give you a clue as to how I think it could trade. The problem is, as in the run into that particular trade, all of that may change. So you form a general opinion, you look for things that are identifying and confirming what your views are, and then you're trying to anticipate that that situation is going to take place. But that trading process is a tiny fraction of all the work that you should be doing. You should be spending all of your time understanding what's going on, trying to really understand your true objective. And when you get a grip on that, then you'll find that all of that other stuff slots into place. So yeah, it looks easy, and when you see some of those results, they look astonishing, but that is basically the end product of an immense amount of work. And it's the same whatever you do in any aspect of your life. That thing where you have to make that decision, where you go through that process, is going to be the end result of a lot of work outside of that you simply cannot see. So yeah, there's no magic to it, and the big secret is that there is no big secret. Living the dream, it conjures up all sorts of images, doesn't it? Beautiful beaches, crashing waves, financial independence, a life of absolute luxury. That's how people often position it. But actually, if you've actually lived the dream, if you've actually gone through what it takes to achieve some of those things, I think you have a very different view on what living the dream is actually all about.